Broadcast today, I'll be talking about social mobility. Yeah, social mobility is a very, very important topic. And as you would know, here at Africa Media Australia, we focus on highlighting important issues that help to advance the African Australian agenda, but also we're wanting to pretty much go beyond what we do within African communities, because once you're on the internet today, you're global. So we'll be focusing on, I suppose, the African communities around the world. Obviously, you know the sayings, think global, act local. We're acting local because we're based in Australia, but we're thinking global, and we look at all these issues that affect African Australian communities, and also the issues that affect African communities everywhere. So Africa is in our heart, and we want to do something about advancing the community. So social mobility is the topic today. What is social mobility? Well, it's simply a fancy term to say that people should move from lower level of society to higher levels. You can be born in a poor family, but you don't have to stay poor. You can lift yourself out of poverty. You can start work. For example, you can enter workforce in a factory, but you don't have to stay in a factory. You can perhaps not only get promoted within the factory, but get out of the factory and get a better job, and maybe even start your own factory on whatever skills that you have. Because when you go into any job, you acquire skills, and then you can utilize those skills to develop yourself and perhaps put a business together and be able to develop a whole business out of that. So that is what social mobility is. But the question is, how do you achieve social mobility? So this is a very, very important question in the community, because I think a lot of time we don't sufficiently reflect on these type of issues. Yes, there are actions that are taken, but there needs to be more, because let's face it, poverty is something that is connected to many African communities, whether that is in the continent as well as in the diaspora communities. And I suppose we ought to be able to reflect more on how we reduce poverty, because we're probably not going to eliminate it 100%, but we need to reduce it. And we shouldn't wait for people to think for us. We should think for ourselves and find ways to develop individuals, families, and communities, because we can do it. We've got the skills, we've got the resources. We may not have as many resources that we need to, but if we utilize each other's strength, then I'm sure we can achieve more in what we are doing. So what are some of the ways of achieving social mobility? Well, I'll just mention 3 today, because obviously I don't want to make a very, very long video. We'll be short, and then we'll have second or third video on social mobility, because I think it's a very important point. The first thing to do to enable social mobility is to focus on education and skills development. Now, we know that education is the key to better life, but it's not any type of education. It has to be quality education, and an education that focuses on developing skills that are needed in the economy. Because, for example, in Africa, I know there are a lot of schools, people go to university, they learn. When they come out of university, they can't find any jobs, and all they know, they've got all these theories. We have economists, we have all types of people with good theories, but they don't really have really marketable skills that are needed in the industry, that are needed in the economy. So education is good. It has to be of good quality. It also has to make sure, we also need to make sure that education is connected to the economic needs of the society. And within the African Australian context, for example, I know there are a lot of members of the African community who come to Australia with very limited education, especially those coming from a forced migration background. And then on the other hand, you have very, very highly skilled professionals who have been coming lately in the last 10 years or so. So people come on different sort of, in different circumstances. Those who obviously come with limited education ought to be able to find a way to improve their education and then focus on which particular, what type of education they get and what skills they want to be able to develop. So that is something that within our conversations in the forums that we have, we ought to be able to see how we can, I suppose, push for quality education for our communities. And it's not all about just what the government can do. It's also about what the community can do, because the government often will, especially in countries like Australia and many first world countries, governments want to listen to communities to see what are the issues and how these issues can be fixed. So the community becomes a partner with the government, providing a lot of insight on what is needed. Within Africa, obviously, it depends where you are. Many of our African government, unfortunately, do not always do the right thing, do not always provide the resources that are needed in the community. So people are left to fend for themselves, and that's not always the best thing to do. But having said that, it's important that whatever you are or wherever we are as Africans, that we ought to be able to play some role in improving the education and skills development, because that's how, as a community, we can achieve social mobility. That was one. Secondly, economic empowerment and entrepreneurship. Yeah, and that is a field that we're actually quite involved in at the moment. We've set up a platform called Afropreneur Summit Australia, which is actually bringing entrepreneurs together, pushing for an agenda that is focusing on economic empowerment, because that is not sufficiently taken care of within our communities. And there is a global, I suppose, narrative around entrepreneurship that is catching, that many communities are connected to, including us. So we need to find ways to develop the entrepreneurship within our communities and economic empowerment. By the way, if you are in Australia, we've got the Afropreneur Summit happening in Melbourne on the 9th of September. Remember the date, 9th of September in Melbourne, and in Sydney as well on the 16th of September. There'll be more communication on this on our website, Africa Media Australia, as well as Afropreneur Summit. .com.au. The third thing that helps to achieve social mobility is social support and networking. You see, the networks within our social environment are very important. They help people to, connect with others who actually can provide insight, they can guide, they can mentor, and they can assist those within the community that are less fortunate or that are simply trying to find their way out. In every community, there are always people who are doing well in some areas and those who are, sort of trying still to find their way or perhaps not even really knowing what to do. So once you develop a strong social networking within the community, providing platforms that enable and encourages collaboration and mentorship and social cohesion, all of that can be quite critical in improving social mobility within the community. So that's the topic for today. We will be having more videos and more publications on social mobility on africamediaaustralia.com.au, as well as on afropreneursummitaustralia.com. If you would like to contact us, if you want to communicate, perhaps you may have some expertise in this area, feel free to contact us and we'll be happy to have you on the platform at some point. Until then, Thank you very much. And please, we ask you to share this video, to like our page, and to comment, because all that indicates, will give us some indication of how we're doing in terms of the impact we're having in the community. Thank you very much.